Welcome to the Chain Out Podcast with your hosts, Jeremy and Daryl.
Hey everyone, welcome to Chain Out Podcast. It's
Merry
our Christmas episode.
Christmas!
Ho, ho, ho. Merry Christmas to all of you listening to this on Christmas Day.
Yes.
You know, you've probably, Daryl? You probably opened some presents this morning. What have you been done, do you think?
Oh yeah, you've had a few
And-
eggnogs. Maybe you, depending on when you eat your Christmas lunch, maybe it's at lunchtime. You've had some turkey, you've had some stuffing.
And you've
sitting
had
down.
enough family that you've said to yourself, I need a break. And what better way to take a break than to spend about an hour here, we're thinking,
Yeah,
with your two favorite Canadian disc golf podcasters?
exactly. You didn't think we were going to miss an episode, did you?
No way.
I'm
we
not
weren't gonna
Jeremy.
Do that to you. Oh yeah, that's true. Daryl's got a streak going, so I got a UDisc streak, but you've got a podcast.
There you go. That's more important to me, the podcast tree.
Fair enough. But we should tell everybody this is season 2, episode 58, Chain Out Podcast. I'm Jeremy. That's Daryl. Daryl, why are we so deep voiced in this episode? Do you know why? Did you do something with the tonal aspects of it?
Yeah, I've adjusted it. Yeah, I've just lowered the pitch down a little bit. No. Do we need to tell people? Well, everybody
we
knows
can
this
tell
is a
people.
pre-recorded. We're not doing this live on Christmas Day.
No. We would love to do that, but we have families, and our families might tell us that that's not the way they want us to spend Christmas.
Exactly. No, we weren't going to miss an episode, so the only way that we were able to do it was to pre-record. So this is a pre-recorded Christmas special for you guys. And obviously 7 days later, we're going to have another pre-recorded special for you coming up later on New Year's Day. But right now, this is where we are. It's a little bit early in the morning.
It is. I got.
But you don't know
go out
that.
for a walk. No. People watching think it's the smoke and mirrors and stuff.
Exactly.
But I'm going to tell you that normally we'd have a beverage in our hands. I still have a beverage in my hands, but I've opted for the Starbucks iced coffee. Is what I've kind of went for.
Yeah,
this morning.
I went with the coffee with peppermint oat milk in it, but as you can tell, I needed it. I needed to drink it already.
So even at home, you make a fancy coffee, hey?
It's just coffee with peppermint oat milk in it. That's all it is.
I don't know. It sounds fancy to me.
Okay.
So
It's
with
Christmas.
this episode here, it's Christmas, right?
Yeah.
It's Christmas. And I like the decorations you got behind you. I tried to put a little bit of our kind of subtle Christmas decorations behind me as well,
Yeah.
get a feeling for the season. But I thought with this episode, and you and I talked about it, we kind of came up with the idea that we do our Christmas episode as a look back, as opposed to that kind of thing. And then when we get to the New Year's episode, we can do maybe a look forward.
There you
Is
go.
what I was thinking.
That's what we were thinking. A look back and a look forward to what's to come on the podcast.
Yeah, and we came up with that idea just recently here, and maybe we can bring that up. We had driven out to Fort Saskatchewan this past week, and we headed out there, and we went to the Canadian Brew House, and we met with Daryl and Curtis from the Fort Saskatchewan Disc Golf Association, and they had some super exciting news, and they were celebrating.
They're not an association yet.
Oh, they're not yet.
They haven't associated
They're a
yet.
club,
They're
so they'd be a club.
a club, or they're a group. They're a something. They're an organized bunch
An
of guys.
organization of like-minded individuals.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But the common goal, or the reason why they all came together in the first place, was to get a course in the ground in Fort Saskatchewan. They were mentioning that out of all the bedroom sleepy communities around Edmonton, Fort Saskatchewan was the one that was left without a course. Now that Stony Plain has their new course put in the ground by Mike Piska, and talking to Daryl, he had quite a few conversations with Mike and everybody that's been involved with disc golf, Brendan and Matt Wildman, answering all the questions, knowing which way to go, what can they do to get a course in the ground, and it worked out for them.
Yeah, and that was it. So we got a chance to have a beverage, have some food with them, celebrate the fact that next year is the plan, from what we understand, is they've got the money allocated from the city of Fort Saskatchewan, and they're going to put 9 holes in the ground. We also met a gentleman there by the name of Chris, who's part of the Nordic community, but also a disc golfer. So it's going to be a shared use space, and he's more than excited to have one in there, and he wants to have 9 permanent holes.
Right.
And then their hope is eventually to have 9 holes that can be seasonal, where they're in for the summer, and then they're out in the winter so that it doesn't impact the Nordic group. And you know what? That sounds like a great coming together of
Yeah.
two different communities to put together a course. I love the idea of it, and I can't wait to get out there and try that course when it's in the ground.
Yeah, it's so good that you have somebody in another sport or using the same area that's so understandable that once, like you said, that coming together of shared space. Yes, they know that they use that area for the Nordic trails and things like that. They've been using it for a while, and then all of a sudden this people show up and want to put these baskets in the ground with collars and things like that may not injure, well, it could injure, but also just hamper their winter fun. But to be able to recognize that, yeah, it's a shared space, and why shouldn't they at least have something permanent for the winter? If it's 9 holes, that's great, and then be able to put the back 9 in the summer. That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing too, what we should shout out, because we know we have listeners all across Canada, and a lot of listeners who maybe have been thinking about how do I get a course in my area and what do I put in. One of the things I took from that conversation with Daryl when we were sitting there was that he got he worked right from the start with the council, and he even with the mayor got in on that there. And one
Yeah.
of the words that they used was disc golf is the equivalent of a free amenity,
Yeah,
if you remember him saying that. So it was kind of
Absolutely.
one of those, yeah. And it was, what did he say? It was like treating it like kind of like an ice rink, an outdoor ice rink, that type
yeah,
of thing.
like anything like that, like a baseball diamond, like a basketball court, like an outdoor hockey rink, any of those things that are put in place and free to use, free amenities for the community. Treat the disc golf course in exactly the same way, and that's one of the things, like you said, that the mayor was insistent on calling it that, just so that the other council members understood that it is no different to any of those other permanent in the ground shared use, or maybe not shared use, but free to use things that make a city, a place where people want to live and want to be outside during the summer or even in the winter.
Yeah. So I guess what we want to say about that is it's almost like it was an early Christmas present for the Fort Saskatchewan disc golf people. And, we're excited for you. And something that's what I would like to open up
Yeah.
under the tree, right?
One thing I would say is, like you said, or I don't know if you just said it or whether Daryl said it to me, but he had been working with the city for 3 years. I think it's been 3 years that he's just been
Okay.
pushing them, going to meetings. You were lucky enough this summer to go and participate in a pop-up course that they had there, just to try and
Yes.
drum up some, excitement and show how popular that it would be. So if you're thinking about, like you said, speaking to anybody else across Canada, if you're thinking that, just speak to your local council, tell them you're on a course and they'll give you some money. It might not be just as easy as that. You might have to put some hard work in, but it'll pay off in the, and hopefully, if you have other communities around you or there's other courses around you, then it's easier to get one in the ground. But Fort Saskatchewan didn't have any. So big kudos to Daryl and Curtis for getting that done.
Yeah. Fantastic. And you made a great point, Daryl's just saying that put the work in and the work will eventually, hopefully, benefit you in the long run. But it's going to take that time to do those pop-up courses, engage the community, start showing around. We should be doing that anyways,
Yeah.
even if we do have a course. That should just be part of what we're doing to help grow disc golf across the country. And every time we can get one more disc golfer playing, it's going to make it better for everybody on the whole. It's like just another drop in the bucket, right?
Yeah. One thing I just want to add. Hey, Sam. Sam's here watching us as well. He got the notification, and he wants to say that it's nice to see more communities getting courses. It's not crazy hard to have a shared space course. And I know we think like that as disc golfers, but it just goes to show that it is possible. When he was first telling me about the Nordic area, that it was the Nordic community that was shared space, my instant thought was to go to Kingswood, because that's a shared Nordic space. There, they do remove the baskets fully. The complete course comes out of the ground, but the collars are kind of sunk into the ground so that they don't hinder the skiers in the wintertime. And also the tee pads there, you were mentioning that they're turf tee pads, so that when they're covered
Yes.
in snow, it's not like they're going to accidentally bump into a concrete tee pad there. So there are ways around it. It can be done. And Daryl and Curtis are living proof, and the Fort Saskatchewan community are living proof that it can be done.
For sure. So
Yeah.
awesome. Well, Sam, yeah, thanks for joining us. If you got any comments as we go through, we're going to be talking about a little bit about what happened in the past year, and why don't we move to our highest? Or go ahead.
I was just going to preempt Sam just to give him some time to think. The question that we put out on Instagram. What are your highlights from 2024, Sam? You don't have to put them in right now. Have a think. What is your number one highlight from 2024? I can probably guess, but let's move on with the next segment there, Jeremy.
Right. So as our look back on the year, what we wanted to do, or I have here, is let's take a look at our 3 highest rated rounds. Let's not dwell on it too much, but let's maybe put some comments and tell people how we thought about it, or if we even realized they were our highest rated rounds, because we just pulled them up for the episode. I hadn't really dwelled on it for the last 2 weeks or anything like that. And as a surprise as well, I inserted in there for us our lowest rated round of the year.
I did just see that. Yeah.
So do you want to go back and forth by our top, like our number 1, our number 2, and number 3? Should we go that way?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Give a quick rundown on what you remember most about it.
Well, my top rated round, looking at this, was my...
Do you want to go in
first
reverse,
round.
3, 2, 1?
Oh, sure. Yeah, let's go.
Build up to the best round and why it was the best round.
All right. So my third, if you can believe this, my third highest rated round was at Get In, Get Out, Get Rated that we just did in November at Wetaskiwin, thanks to Kristen and Tim Plamondon for putting on that event. Yeah. And I had an 884 rated round there. And I'm trying to think. It says I shot a 65. I think it was, what, a +3, +5 or something like that at Wetaskiwin.
I'm not too sure.
Yeah, that part I should have pulled up, but I didn't have it there. What do I remember?
Yeah,
I remember that it was a good round. I played well. I don't think, were you on my card that? No, that was the mixed round at the beginning, was it?
Right.
Yeah, so that was when we were on different cards. But I do just remember that.
No, it was the second round. So we were
second round. So that was when we played together.
When we played together, yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny. I had a couple bad shots that we remember when we were on 18, and I was all worried because who was out there? Was it Greg Gatsky was out in the field? Yeah, he was playing 9. I was playing 18. He was kind of out there, and you were yelling out to Greg. You were like, "Hey, Greg, we're going to throw." And then Greg, in classic Greg Gatsky style, he's got the personality and the enthusiasm, all that. He just turns around. He's like, "I'm okay, guys. Go ahead. Throw. And then turns
and he stands there and looks back at you. And you were going to wait for him to take his shot and move on, but I was like, it's okay. We'll just shout at Greg and tell him that we're throwing. It'll be fine. And then obviously that put the spotlight on you, so I kind of felt a little bit bad about that.
No, so that
obviously it didn't hinder you that much.
No, obviously it didn't. But I think my highlight, if we want to finish off that round, was there's that hole on the front 9. I think it's hole 7, which is along the back, and there's that fence line. And I've hit that throw a few times. So what you have is you got trees on the left, you got some trees on the right, but then it opens up to a road, but there's a barbed wire fence. And if you're over that fence, you're out of bounds. And you're taking an out-of-bounds shot, and your chances are you're coming back quite a ways. So it's just a par 3 straight down a pipe, but you've got a little bit of room on the right to go out and back. And I threw out a crave, and I was under the basket, and that's kind of what it was. That was one of the things that probably helped me get to the 884, was having some shots like that were exactly where I wanted it to be. So now, how about you? What was your third highest?
You pulled up my third highest, and it was actually round 2 of River City Cup. And actually that whole event for me was a good event. I don't know what it was. I was just playing well. For us, round 1 and 3, we played at Hermitage.
Just round 1?
Just round 1 we played. 2 and 3 was at Rundle. Yeah. So my third highest round was round 2 at River City Cup. And like I said, I just remember having a good round. Normally, there are times where I can go off the rails and then it's hard to get it back. And then sometimes I'll get it back. Sometimes it's just nemesis holes that I have that I know, and I think I get in my own head that way. But yeah, it was like I said, I don't remember exactly like 1 or 2 shots or holes, that was standout. I think it just played good from beginning to end. I had different card mates, obviously, for the first, second, and third round. And nobody annoyed me. Nobody got in my head. There wasn't anything that was terrible that way. It's just a great round. And, with it being our home course, probably that may have had some aspect to it. But Rundle can beat me up pretty bad sometimes during league. So whatever it was just maybe the conditions. It was a great round for me.
Yeah, and also too in the River City Cup layout, all of the the baskets are pushed
Right.
out a little bit further for the most part. So it is in its most difficult setup, especially
Which
for
is-
amateur disc golfers who maybe don't have the distance, right?
Yeah, which is kind of funny when you think about it, right? I mean, you had your third best round at Wetaskiwin, which is a challenging course for a get in, get out, get rated, and then at River City, pushing it to the tournament layout. Like you said, pushing all those pins to the back. Surprising that that's actually one of our third best rounds of the year.
Well, yours, I'll tell you, my River City Cup does not show up on the highest rated. No spoilers there, but we could talk about that later. But if we go to my second highest rated,
Yeah.
oh, and sorry, to stay with yours was 886 rated for
Right.
anybody who wants to know that.
Yeah.
So then I had my second highest. So your third highest was 886. My second highest round was also 886. And that was at the very beginning of the year. And that was out at spring runoff. And that was round 3. And I
Right.
remember, so spring runoff down in Lethbridge, we played at Nicholas Sharon and we played at Aperture. And we played Aperture for round 1 and round 3. And it was round 3, so I was at Aperture. And I remember we had that first hole, which was another tight tunnel shot with like spruce trees on either side. I didn't start my round out well, but after that, my round was pretty clean. And you and I, because we were a card behind each other, and that was the day that we got a little bit of rain towards the middle of the round.
Right.
So there were a couple holes there where Aperture didn't have tee pads at that point. We were in mud and we were trying to set up on the sides and that. So there was a little bit of challenges that way.
Yeah.
So I ended up playing well. I had a good round, but I think maybe the weather conditions probably impacted the other people in our field in the MA40 group, and by impacting other people and who were also playing the same layout. So I played well in adverse conditions, and I think that helped my rating go up that one. But yeah, I remember that as a fond round as well.
Yeah. I think if you remember back round 1, we were on separate cards, but we ended up shooting the same. So we played together on the second round, but then you
Oh man.
beat me on the second round, and then you moved off to the card behind, or I was the card behind you, or
Yeah.
in front of
But
you.
I was
Yeah.
But I was thinking about that, Daryl, too. Like Nicholas Sharon, what a beast that one was, hey?
Yeah.
Such a long course like that. Everyone said it's a Rundle but longer, and I guess that was a fair assessment of it. But I would love to play that course again, but I think we would probably be better suited now at the end of the year that our games have improved as opposed to the way we were at the start of the year.
And we were pretty much playing it blind because we didn't throw any practice round. We
the
walked
holes.
it, but we didn't actually. Oh yeah, I think we played half. That's right.
Yeah.
We played half, and then we walked the other half during the practice round because we'd already played Aperture at that point. So yeah. Moving on to my second highest rated round. So my second highest rated round was 890.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Man,
And believe it
you're
or
pushing that
not,
900.
it was round 3 at River City Cup. Yeah.
Look at
So for
that.
that whole event, round 1, like you said, was at Hermitage. I played pretty good. Round 2, I shot even better. And then round 3, I shot even better again. So I progressively got better through that tournament. I do remember that. And I remember somebody that we would, if we see him on a card or in a tournament, if he's in our division, and I'm thinking of Travis Bouchard, we
Oh,
know,
man.
all right, so we're not going to win. We're at least going to come second or third to him, depending on who else might be on the card. But he's one of those names that, you look, and I think back to Tundra Toss, where he just laid the smackdown on us and just outplayed us out of the water on that tournament. But coming into the last hole on round 3 at River City, he was checking the scorecards, and I hadn't done that up until that point, and it was only maybe 1 or 2 tournaments at the end of the year that I started to check PDGA Live, the scorecards, just to see where I might be falling in that, in the order. But he was checking it. He knew that he could lay up on his last hole, and still take the putt to still beat me by 1. So, just had a good round again. Just like I said, just kept getting better at that tournament. So no surprises that round 3, 890 rated there for me at River City was where it is.
Well, and with that, Daryl, I hope we're not finding a trend here, but I do remember something about River City Cup. And what that was you and I played at Hermitage round one, and we were on the same card.
Right.
I wasn't on either of your cards for your two higher rated rounds. So I hope you're not noticing a trend in this. This was just supposed to be for us to reminisce and look back at the year.
Right.
But you'll be like, I'm never playing with Jeremy again. Every time I do, I don't get my highest rated rounds.
Exactly.
So, and speaking of that, my highest rated round, if we want to flip back on here,
Mm-hmm.
was 889. So not even as high as your second highest rated round.
Right.
And that was round one at Wally's 100 out at Rocky Lane Fairways in Athabasca. And I remember we played at that one, we played the white layout, then the blue layout, then the white layout. And we were there for 3 days. It was a B tier, and he had it over the 3 days. And we started out with a tunnel where we had like a blow up archway that we had to throw through.
Yeah.
So it's like, again, we've talked about this when we talk to the pros about the A tiers and stuff. And it's like, why do they always make the first hole so hard? And having that, like that was one of those things where as soon as you stepped up on the tee box, you know you have to throw through this Mando that's just far enough away to make it difficult, right? To get in your head. But
well, you can go back and check, look at our Instagram, look for our highlights of Wally's 100, and you'll see our tee shots at Wally's. And it doesn't seem like it should be. It's a gap that you have to hit, whether the inflatable archway is there or not. But suddenly, it just being there, it just does get in your mind.
Yeah, it does. And, so for me, for that round, what I remember is my forehand was working, and there's some tight wooded tunnel gaps that you have to hit, and I was hitting them. Like I parked one for a birdie on a hole that could easily have been a bogey or double bogey. I also remember I was working in my form, and I was trying to look back more so I didn't open up my shoulder, and I know it was paying off. It didn't pay off any other round that weekend, but it paid off the first round, and it was just little things like that. And that's a course that I know you and I both love, and you can have a great round as you did in your practice. I think you had told me.
Yeah.
But then when you go out the very next time, it could eat you alive. So it's kind of a great course that way where it can go either way.
Yeah. And I think that's a big testament to the mental side of disc golf, because I went out there, practice round, played it blind, and I think I shot like 3 under, 7 under, somewhere. I can't remember exact score, but I know it was under par. And then going out there to play for the tournament, obviously tournament nerves. I've played it now. I know that I can park this hole. I know I hit that gap before. Yeah, didn't work so well for me in that tournament. But yeah, that was a great round by you. I remember how many shots you were better than me. Well, I don't remember exactly how many shots you were better than me, but I know you were quite a few shots better. And that was one of those tournaments where we didn't play together on the first card. We didn't play together on the second card. We didn't play together on the third card either. There was no catching you at that point. And it wasn't a great tournament for me, but you definitely played well at that tournament. And, it's reflected by that 889 rated round.
Yeah, well, thank you on that. And then let's go to what's not going to be surprising to me. I don't know if it's surprising to you, but what your highest rated round was.
See, this is one of those ones where I have to put an asterisk beside it.
I tell you don't, but you always want to anyways.
So my highest rated round was my first win, which was the Big Bertha tournament we did, the Kingswood XL layout with Queer Disc Golf out in Kingswood, St. Albert. It was when we say it's the XL layout, there were 24 holes on round one, and then you played 24 again in round two. It was a long day. I didn't really, I just thought, okay, they've added a few extra holes. But when you realize that you're playing 48 holes in a day, that's more than 2 rounds of golf. So,
yes,
that kind of, it didn't sink in until I think I was like halfway around round 2, and I was like, okay, we're done now. But yeah, something just clicked that round, and it was one of those points where I didn't check the scorecard. I think until we had a backup on one of the holes, the long par 5 at the back end of the course. And then I was waiting. I'm like, maybe I'll just check the scores just to see where I am and, who's ahead of me.
Yeah.
And then I seen this name, when you scroll, you see your name, and then you pull down to go a bit higher up the list. I was pulling down, and it wouldn't show who was ahead of me. because amazingly, I was in first place, and I was like, "This can't be right. I can't be in first place." But yeah, whatever it was, it just clicked at that tournament. Everything I relied heavily on my T-bird. It was just going where I wanted it to go. I was hitting every shot, making it close enough to the basket to be able to take those birdies. And I think I played pretty clean that round as well. I think I only took, or that tournament even, but maybe took 1 or 2 bogeys. And again, my asterisk comes from, the rating just came out. I went down into a lower color-coded group. So I don't know if that has anything to do with the way that, because I played better, and I would say played more to my rating, because I was in a lower rated division and I played well, whether that gave me a boost in my rating, because that score in that division was a good score. But if you compared that, if I was actually playing in the division that my rating is where I like to be, it wouldn't have been that good.
Oh,
And
well,
that's what I'm
going to
saying.
tell you, you know what I'm going to tell you, because I've said it a number of times. Your rating had you in that division. You won that division, and you're the first of Chain Out Podcast to have a career win on their PDGA page. So
you can't take that
congrats on
away.
that.
It does say a career
Nope.
win, but that was an
It does.
893 rated round, round 1 at Kingswood
Yeah,
XL,
so
the Big Bird tournament.
we can talk about this for next episode when we're talking about looking forward, but I see a lot of ratings here that are just under 900. So we'll just leave it at that. But one of the things we should do is, it looks like we had 2 people watching right now, because I know we're recording in the morning there. But if Sam or anybody who is watching has a high rated round, or that they wanted to shout out what their highest rated round is, we could maybe mention that as well. But let's do it. Let's do this.
Do we
part.
need to?
Let's go to our, we need to do it. We're going to go to our lowest rated round. You don't have to do it if you don't want to, but I'm going to do
No,
mine.
it's fine.
So, okay. So my lowest rated round of the year, and I didn't realize it. I actually thought I had grabbed the correct one, but I grabbed a 2023 round. So I just went back and found my 2024 lowest rated round.
Right.
And that was a 797. And that was round 1 at River City Cup in Edmonton at Hermitage. You and I playing together. And it was so strange, because I went out early. Mark Thompson and I went out. We threw 6 holes, I think. And some of the holes that we were going to play, because we knew what hole we were starting on. And I was hitting those lines, and everything was great. And I'm like, this is going to be a great day, a great tournament. I'm like, I had my dad come in to caddy for me, which was fantastic. It was like, made me feel so good. And then we get on the first hole, and I whip it into first available. I think it was hole 18. We were going up the hill, and I just whipped it to the left or the right, whatever it was. And it just was downhill from there. And I remember keeping a positive attitude, but nothing went my way. So that was that one. 797 though, that's kind of where I started last year when I started competing in tournaments. So I can't feel that bad about that being my worst round. So
I don't exactly know how this worked, because it looked like you snipped from my PDGA profile the round and the rating and everything like that, but there seems to be a typo, because my lowest rated round starts with a 6. Yes, unfortunately, we've talked about it many times on the podcast. My blow up at Falcons Flight, and it was only 1 hole, but then it ruined the rest of the round. We know that I took I think I've put it out of my misery, out of my mind now. I think it was a 15, or was it a 17?
17.
17. I tried to make it better. I took a 17 on a hole. It doesn't help when you do that. It was obviously round 2, the tougher course at Falcons Flight at
the West course,
Aspen Meadows, the East course.
East course,
the East course. 1 hole ate me alive and just spat me out, and I didn't do very well for the rest of that round. Jeremy knows, because I was like, "Don't talk to me, Jeremy."
I tried. I was done just before you, because I was sitting in a lower position, right? I had the cart ahead, and I remember I'd gone back to the tent. I'd grabbed myself a beer, because it was a hot day. It was really hot that weekend. And I'm heading back, and hole 18 was right close, and I'm walking up, and I see you, and there's like this hand gesture, just like this push away, and I'm like, I was talking, and I know my voice carries, so I'm like, oh, am I being too loud? Am I distracting the guys on their last hole? And then I walk around, and I could see, and then it wasn't until afterwards, and I think one of the things you and I do is we like to recap our rounds, right? We go back and forth. How was your hole one? This is how my hole one went. How was your hole
Yeah.
one? And I know we were walking back to the tents and you were like, we can do a round recap on yours, but we're not talking about my round.
Yeah, that was not a good day. And it's experience, right? Now I know, don't be stubborn. Take your time. Take a second to walk away. Think about other options. But for whatever reason, in that moment, for people that don't know, I got stuck in a awkward position where I was trying to throw through over out of bounds. It was an out of bounds in kind of a wooded area, and there was a little gap. And for the life of me, I was going to make that gap no matter what, no matter how many shots I threw. Eventually I made it, but then went OB long, but at least I was out at that point. And then, yeah, there was no thought process in between every shot. It was grab a disc and throw. Nope. Okay. Grab a disc and throw. Nope. Okay. Grab another disc and throw. There was no resetting or anything like that. So that's, it was a good learning thing for me.
Well, for sure. And the other thing about that is, at our level at amateurs, we don't usually have caddies, but that's where if you have a caddy that you trust and that you'll listen to is hopefully can help you if you decide to go down that road to talk you out of it is what you would hope. But
Dylan is in the chat.
Dylan?
Yeah. And he and I think we maybe touched on this before, but if you shoot minus 100 off your rating, it's excluded from your overall. And I think Sam says exactly the same thing, and he said he had 2 excluded rounds, so I'm not the only one to be have a bit of a bad round doesn't count, but it's there on my profile.
But you can see, Daryl, in what we've got in our little notes here, yours is grayed out, like it's you can see it's kind of faded, and that's why, whereas mine is not faded because it was close enough to my rating that it stayed in and it was part of the calculation. So there we go. I don't know. Is there anything in the comments from Dylan or Sam or anybody who
not on the
round?
No, not on the round ratings.
Okay.
No, some good memories from Sam, but
we'll get to those.
The highlights. Are we going to bring up the highlights?
I think we'll. I guess
this is all of that. Yeah. Spot. Okay, go ahead.
So then the next thing we had on our list, and I thought this would be good, is, people are doing in the bags, and we don't want to do a full in the bag in an episode like this because that's not what people want to see. But I thought what we could do is we could say, what are our 5 staple discs, our 5 workhorse discs that they got us through this year.
Yeah.
And for all intents and purposes, we're going to start next year with them in our bag.
Right.
So we can
discs
talk
that maybe
about
have come and gone, but these discs are in our bag and they're in there for a reason. And tell us why they're in the bag for a reason.
Well, and I think when we talked about that with Dylan on the Around the Basket last episode, he had kind of mentioned something along those lines of he has his core bag and then he builds out around it. So this is kind of almost that same kind of concept in my mind, is that what is that core? We'll put other discs in and out all around these discs, but these ones will come out and they're the trusted discs. They're the discs we'll throw all the time. Yeah. So do you want to do them one at a time, or do you want to zip through them?
We should zip through them a little bit here because we are pushing time, but we can give a short explanation as why that disc is one of your discs.
Grab that stack, sir, and you might as well start this one.
Okay, you want to go back and forth, or you want to go 5 at a time?
No, I think if we're going for time, I think you should kind of run through it fairly quickly, just kind of list them off and maybe a quick memory or something.
This disc isn't the actual disc, but it's a disc, and it's a disc for a reason. One of my discs, and I said at Kingswood, the disc that I relied on heavily is my T-Bird. And I'm just kind of showing here my Jen Allen T-Bird because Proto Glow. Hold it up to the light, it'll glow. But T-Bird for me, it's just that straight fairway with a little bit of fade at the end. Reliable. I know it was the first disc that I got that I bought in multiple molds, because that's what people were saying to me. If you have the same disc, and that was the kind of the level up moment that we've talked about in the past before, that if you like throwing a disc, get it in multiple plastics, in multiple molds. That way, once it gets beat in, you have a disc that you can work, and it's the same feeling in your hand. So T-Bird for me. This is a disc. My next disc is a disc that I got kind of late in the year, but once I got it, I know it's going to be in the bag for a while, and I've got 2 versions of it. It's my Innova Racer.
Oh yeah, you love that one.
Yeah, I love the Racer. It's like a beat-in destroyer. I can get some right turn on it, right turn, a little bit of fade at the end. Feels good. It flies very well for me. I can get good distance on it. So I know the racer is going to be in there. Probably should have a racer more than I have my destroyer, but that's what we're going with. My next one kind of came as a recommendation from a Nate Sexton in the bag video that I watched for him. It's my R Pro Dart. Now, dart specifically because of the R Pro plastic. Like once I got this R Pro plastic, it's so grippy for me. It's soft, but still firm enough that it, I can hold it and I know it's gonna fly well. But the gumminess to it just feels good in my hand. And this dart for me is a left to right fading disc. I can throw it out and it will hold that left to right turn the whole flight of the disc. There's no left finish at the end. So
gotcha.
I can throw that on a bit of a hyzer flip, or I can throw it out and I know that it's going to be predictable coming back to the right. Now, this one may surprise you, but I'm putting it in anyway. It's my new putter that I've got, the Zero.
Yeah.
And it's an R Pro plastic again. I know it's only a new addition to the bag, but I think now that I've found the putter that works for me, I can see that, I tried all those other putters. In the beginning of the year, I was throwing with Bergs. Then I switched over to Pixels. Then I went Innova, and I tried Aviars. I tried Invaders. I tried a few other discs. The Zero, for me, feels good in my hand. R Pro plastic, and I can see that staying in the bag for quite a while. My last disc is the very first disc that I ever bought. We talked about this with Jason from Disc Republic, and this is the exact disc. It's my G-Star Mako 3. Like I said, I look back on the invoice. This was one of the first discs that I put in my bag. Mainly got it because of the flight numbers, because I figured 0-0, it's going to fly dead straight for me. Actually, it's a little bit understable now, maybe because I've thrown it so much, or just every Mako is kind of in that flight. Well, that's what the numbers do. But this G-Star, again, it's a bit like my Dart, but I can get more distance on it. I get it to hold those big turnover shots, and it's in the bag and it will never leave.
Nice. And I don't know, because we didn't really talk about this, but do you have an honorable mention at all? Like one that you just want to be there, and sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not, but it's like, that's your 5 core, which is a great core. I love it. Mm-hmm. It's all Innova, of course.
Exactly. I would say
so
the one that is either there or it's not is my iDie Destroyer. Yeah. Because it was one of the first discs that I threw, and I could get it a little bit. It's a destroyer. I probably shouldn't be throwing it with my arm speed, but it actually went. If I threw it on some Anheuser, I knew it would be predictable. Dump back to the left, but I could actually get some distance out of it. The problem is when I do throw it like that, and if I'm not reading the wind correctly, that -1 for some reason it'll just hold that turn, and it won't ever come back out of it. And this is one of the ones that I ruined my round at the Edmonton Open. Final round, I was playing in MA3. You were scorecard watching. You seen that I was up into 3rd place, and I had 1 hole left to go. And if I held on, if I threw a clean shot or a clean hole, but it was the
podium, I think.
Yeah, it was the par 5 at Bailey's Crossing. For people that don't know, I just threw this. It hit the wind. It turned over and went OB right. And I was like, how do I turn over a destroyer? But that's what happened. And then the second shot, I thought I'd throw it again because obviously I went out of bounds early. Threw it again. Same thing. I went maybe 10 feet in front of me and it went out of bounds again. So then this is a disc that it will work, but when it doesn't, it's a bad disc. So it's not going to get banished, but it's an honorable mention that when it works, it works.
Yeah. Well, that's a great list of discs for sure. I love that iDie one. I love the way it looks. I want to take a minute to just look at the chat here because Dylan's thrown in his core.
Absolutely.
So Dylan's core is a P2, a Buzz, an FD, a Firebird, and a Cloudbreaker, which sounds like a pretty good setup to me from what I know about those discs.
Yeah.
You got a nice solid fairway there in the Buzz. The Firebird is a disc that a lot of people like. Brock's got in there an Envy, a K3 Yarn, a Fission Crave, a Firebird, and a Shrike. And then we got Sam just dropped his there. I always love Sam's bag because Sam likes to throw discs from all different manufacturers.
Absolutely.
He doesn't just stick with one, nor does he just stick with the most popular. He'll figure out a disc that he likes from everywhere.
Yeah.
So some of these I may not even know, but he's got a Harp in there. He's got a Meridian Ravine, an Explorer, a Shift, and an AGL Locust. So like that's a cool setup. And that's the one thing about when we play with Sam is just getting to see what he is actually throwing.
Yeah, and like you said, he likes to throw from all different manufacturers. A Harp, I know, I've thrown a Harp. An Explorer, I haven't thrown one, but I know the disc. A Meridian Ravine, never heard of it. Don't even know who makes it. The Shift,
probably Meridian.
I think a Shift is
Streamline.
Yes, it's the Streamline Shift, and then the AGL Locust I've never heard of or never thrown or never seen where that came from. So I know it's by AGL, but yeah, I've never heard of those other discs. But one thing I just wanted to say on those other picks, you can tell the people that know how to throw discs and the popular disc, because Dylan throws a Firebird, Brock throws a Firebird. It's a popular disc, Jeremy.
Well, and that's a slot that just, it may not need to be a Firebird, but a Firebird is the most popular in that slot.
Yeah.
But that's one of those discs that a lot of people have. What I think would be great is that if our people watching this afterwards or watching on Christmas, that kind of thing, put your 5-core in there, because one thing people could go back on is if they're trying to build a bag or they're trying to try something new because they're trying to rework their game, these 5-core discs are things that people could maybe start with and go play a few rounds with it and then fill out your bag from there. So
I do have something to mention. Well, I was just going to say on that topic, if you're looking to build a bag and you're looking for a disc that's kind of like a Firebird, but you don't want to throw a Firebird or a Firebird's not good for you, go to the website trydiscs.com. Yeah. On the left-hand side, you'll see a portion where you can put in, you'll put in the name of a disc, so you put in Firebird. And then on the right-hand side, it'll give you a list of all manufacturers and discs that fall very close or similar to those flight numbers. So if you put in a Firebird, it'll show you other 9304 flight number discs. It might be 9404 or 93-13. Like it'll give you the flight numbers that are very close to what you're looking for. So it's a great tool that I've used to try and find a disc by flight numbers that I may not have heard of or may not have ever seen before. But go ahead, Jeremy. Give me your 5.
Well, you told me about that site, and all I would tell people is that we were just looking at that together. It was my first time on the site, and when you get to the main page, you'll see a spot that says compare discs, and then when you click that, you'll get right to the page that you're talking about where you can put in any disc, and it'll just start showing them up. And you can even filter it down to certain manufacturer comparables.
Oh, yeah. Lots of... Yeah.
It's amazing. Yeah. So my discs, you're not going to be surprised, Daryl. I've been putting with this thing for how long? It's a 5... EV7 disc. You've actually given me the ones you bought because you saw me putting with them and thought, hey, if they work for Jeremy, maybe they'll work for you. This one even still has your name on the back of it. But it's when I'm putting and my putt is on, that's the disc I'm always putting with. It'll always be there. A disc that was in my bag, it left my bag because I gave it to a friend in order to get another disc, and now I've just brought it back in, and it's going to be a staple, is my Svea. My Castoplast K1 line Svea. I love the way this disc flies. I love the glide on it. I know we said before that glide doesn't mean anything, but this disc glides and I love it.
Yeah.
My next disc that's been in here for quite a long time, it was one of my early purchases, is my Fission Crave. So, my good buddy Brock in the chat there and I, Fission Crave. This one used to be bright pink, kind of like the one you have, Sonia has.
Yeah.
But it's faded so much over time. But I love it because it's straight, it's light, it's easy to throw. That's always going to be in my bag. After that, a disc I got out of my Gyro Palooza box last year, I haven't opened this year's yet, is my MVP Resistor. Resistor.
Yeah.
So Resistor, this is my overstable. So this fits in my Firebird Destroyer type spot. It's kind of like a baby time lapse is what I call it. And then I did get an ace this year with it, and that's on the back there. Nice. And then Daryl, you know what disc is coming up next. There's only one other disc that got in my bag and it's never come out.
Yeah.
And that's my mantra. I never had a Thought Space disc. You're going to say, Jeremy, how did you even think of a Thought Space disc? I was at Limber at the Limber Open looking in their store. I saw this one here. It had a really cool stamp, that alien stamp. Whoever makes the stamps for Thought Space does an amazing job, whether it's the Pathfinders, you name it. So it was the stamp that kind of got to me, and it was in the right numbers. Yeah. And as I said, if you look really close, In other times, you can see that little black mark on the edge. That's the tire track that turned it into the best disc ever. So that's what I got there, Daryl. And then as my honorable mention, which I'd have to put in there, and that is my good old musket.
Right.
I had a nice blue musket that was from a disc swap. I put that into the pond out at Athabasca, but I still have this red one, and I will always keep that in my bag as an honorable mention. It doesn't get thrown as often as the other discs, but it is there for me when I need it.
Yeah, those are good picks.
Yeah.
And it's funny how, knowing you and knowing which disc you throw, like I definitely would have picked your Mantra. I would have picked the Sphere for you. I would have picked your putter, and I would have picked your Crave.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the Resistor it just fits a slot, right? And I love that one in my hand. So, but the other thing I'll tell everybody about, and I'm making a pre-commitment here to you, is I have a Gyropalooza box. I have not opened it yet. I'm going to do that probably at Christmas. Maybe we'll have it back for the New Year's there. But one disc out of that box is for the listeners. I don't know which one yet, but I'm going to take one of those discs and we're going to give it away.
It's going to be a Teleport or a Dimension, or it's going to be the 14.5 speed. No spoilers, but it might be. No, that's awesome.
We'll see. Yeah. So that's good there, Daryl. How are we doing? We can keep rolling along here, hey?
Got a few more minutes. Let's keep going.
All right. Well, let's get to our last section here. And we put a note out to the listeners. It was very recent here, where we asked, what was your favorite memory or your favorite moment of the past year of your disc golf season?
Yeah.
And we did get some answers, and maybe we can start with some of the guests' answers if we want to do that.
Well, you know what? Let's just put it out there because Sam has his highlights in there. So we'll do Sam, and then we'll also ask anyone else in the chat if you want to put in your highlight of 2024, something that stands out for you, a memorable moment. Put it in the chat, and we'll read it out. Well, let's go with Sam's to start with. Then maybe me or you can go, and then we'll go back to the chat. How's that sound?
We got a couple that we had that came in through Instagram as well.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah. Sam, he's got too many highlights to mention. It's hard to pick one. He met a lot of really great people in 2024. So really genuine, nice, caring people. That was great. Playing wise, an eagle I hit in Lethbridge at Nationals, at NADGT
Sweet.
Nationals. Sam, that's amazing. I didn't know you hit an eagle. And then another highlight, selfishly though, he photobombed Gannon Burr in Texas accidentally. That's a fun disc golf memory. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome for sure.
Lots of great
So do you
highlights from Sam.
Yeah, great ones for sure. Well, Daryl, hit us with your highlight if you've got one. What do you got as your highlight or favorite moment?
I guess it's going to have to be the win at Kingswood. As much as I keep saying it's an asterisk next to it, a win is a win. I guess and I played well. So it's one of those where I didn't think, I thought I was playing the same as everybody else. I thought my game normally gets me about between 7th and 11th, depending on how many people are on the card or in the tournament in our division. So I didn't think that I played any better than anyone else, but whether they played badly on that day or I was just playing really good, but it got me the win. So a win is a win. I'll take it. That was one of my highlights for sure.
Well, and I think probably everything about that day, like Andy Seawright in Queer Disc Golf, Mike Carey, Brock Cicchetti, all put that event together.
Yeah.
They took a course and they turned it into, which is normally, as we just learned, a dink and dunk from Kevin Fodry. They took a dink and dunk
dink
course.
And dunk, yeah.
And they turned it into a longer course, which made that more interesting. The day was really good. We'd had Andy on the podcast before talking about the event, and we heard that it by far, up until this point, that was probably one of the best Queer Disc Golf events that they've ever put on. So you had all of that building up into it as well, and add your win on top of it. Yeah, how can that not be a highlight, right?
Exactly. And how about yourself?
Well, I'm going to go with that, but the one other one I want you to think of while we're doing this is think about your podcasting highlight of the year, or a highlight. We don't want to go your number one, but one of the things that was a highlight for you.
For sure.
So for me, one of my highlights from my year for my disc golf side of things had to be Nationals in Clearwater. I loved it. There was everything about that weekend was fantastic. being the fact that MA40 teed off right after FPO and getting a chance to interact with all the FPOs, watching them warm up, seeing them take their first shots, getting a chance to follow their cards for a few holes and then play my round. That was fantastic. Seeing Thomas, seeing Casey, Sophia, meeting Brian Henniger from the PDGA,
Right.
Matt and Andre. Like, it was just there was so many people there. It was such a cool vibe. And that's why I'm so stoked and want to get to nationals again out in Ontario this year, because I think it's going to be that same vibe, but it's going to be an East Coast predominant with West
Yep.
Coast coming to visit, as opposed to West Coast with East Coast coming. Like Colleen McInnes came out, right? So
Yeah.
it was fantastic, and that would definitely be my highlight. Because even you were watching my scores, and that course was one of those ones where it had a very low margin to error, the courses that we played.
Right.
So 3 strokes could move you multiple places up and down. So you would text me, you're like, "Oh, did you have a bad round, bud?" Because I dropped in the standings, but I still felt I played really well. So it was a different experience for me to see that, hey, you missed 3 shots, you're dropping down a player board. You make a couple shots, you're going up real quick as well. So
Yeah.
it was fantastic experience.
And that just goes to show you, when you're score watching, you don't get the feel for the event. You don't get to feel how hard it is or how well you're playing, those sort of things. So, yeah, that was definitely. But yeah, nationals, the who's who of Western Canadian and Canadian disc golfers. Hopefully, when we go out to nationals in the East, we'll have a who's who of Eastern Canadian and all everybody else that's going to be there as well. People that didn't get a chance to come out to Clearwater, we'll get a chance to see them and speak to them and maybe do some interviews and things like that. That'll be interesting.
Yes. Yeah.
So let's go to the listeners that we put out on social media. Do you want to start with the first one?
Sure. Yeah, we put out the question to what was your favorite moment on Instagram, and Kristen got back to us, Kristen Swirls, and she had said, "Got to be playing cards on the deck at Nationals in Clearwater with buds during Nationals." And so that's a memory that I have as well. So Mark and I were out there. We were out, Kristen and Tim had a Airbnb, and they had a nice patio. It was raining that night, and it was looking out over it was an elevated lookout, so it was a nice lookout. We were playing a game that some people call President, a card game.
Okay.
Other people may call it an expletive that starts with an A. I don't know if
Right.
So
No,
it
we're
was
not
a game
monetized
there.
at the moment, but we don't want to get demonetized before we even start.
Well, I can say a hole, can't I?
You can. Yeah.
All right. So yeah. So anyways, that's what it's called as well. So we're playing this game here, and we're having a couple beverages, and we're having fun. And my personality is at top marks at that point, and we're just laughing and joking, and everybody's personality is at top, and it was a fun time, and that really added to that whole experience as opposed to just the disc golf. So that's what I know about Kristen's, and Kristen, that was a highlight for me of nationals as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Our buddy Mark, first ever guest on the podcast. His highlight is an event that we both never got a chance to go to this year. His highlight, he played in the Wildman Classic, which was out at Drayton Valley. I forget which division he played in. Whether it was MA1 or MA2, I'm not can't quite remember. But his highlight, he said, I guess it's probably going to have to be that playoff win at Wildman Classic, parking that first hole shot. So, yeah, Mark, I think was a couple strokes back coming into the last few holes, managed to tie it up on the 18th. Went to a playoff. This is his story that he told us. We obviously weren't there, but ended up going to a playoff hole, or it was going to be multiple holes, but kind of mentioned to the person that he was tied with, should we just do this hole one? Closest to the pin wins. Let's decide it on hole one. Neither of them wanted to carry on, playing too much disc golf after the long weekend. And he said that hole one, I don't think he'd ever birdied it the whole round. And then in the playoff, he threw, I can't remember what disc he said he threw, but I know he said he threw it and he parked it right under the basket.
Yes.
And then
that's out there. Go ahead.
The person that he was playing with, I think, kind of pushed it out wide from the green, couldn't make the putt, and Mark just had to tap in for the win. And Sam's confirming that it was MA2.
Right. And that's out at that Grand Prairie course or not Grand Prairie, Drayton Valley
Drayton
course
Valley.
that we haven't been to yet, but we want to get out there because from what we understand is a nice wooded course with great fairways and unforgiving off fairways.
Yeah, I was going to say nice in quotes.
Yes, there
It's
you
a
go.
a great looking course, probably a good course to play. Not very forgiving and quite tough.
Yeah. All right. Well, if we go quickly to what was your kind of one of your highlight memories of the podcast this year? I know we did our 50th recap show, but I'm thinking hit a couple, even if it's a couple, just let's hit them quick. And what are some of your fondest memories here of the podcast over the last year?
Yeah, one of the ones that I would say, it almost stems back into 2023. So I know it's a little bit past the year recap that we're doing, but one of the highlights is actually doing a podcast. Like the fact that we got it off the ground and we're doing it, and we never knew what it was going to be. Can we actually do this? Is anyone going to listen? Are we going to be able to have enough content? Are we podcasters? That sort of thing. So the fact that we actually did it and we've grown the podcast into what it is now. So we got it started in 2023, but it really kind of picked up in 2024. So that would be one of my highlights. Do you want me to do another one?
Oh, well,
You go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead. 'Cause
Okay.
I think one of our highlights is going to be
overlap
the
a
same.
bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think too, to go on, and I'll say one of my highlights is what you're saying as well, is how accepted the community has been to us and how we went from being two guys just saying, maybe people will listen to us, maybe not, but we can just put it out there and have a good time and see what happens. But the fact that all of the tournament directors, all of the players, all of our local community, Edga has been so supportive, everybody in Alberta, being the chance that we were actually able to get Canadian pros on the show and bring more exposure to them. I just love the community that's been developing and that we are actually part of it. And that's been a highlight for me for sure.
Absolutely. That was your highlight?
That's
okay,
one
sorry.
of them.
I wasn't sure if you were just clarifying more on my.
You thought I was just doing a speech.
The other
That's
highlight.
one of my highlights.
The other highlight is more of a highlight for me and you. It didn't seem like it kind of resonated too much with our community. I mean, everybody liked it. It was a great experience, but for us, I think it's going to have to be one of those top highlights, and that was doing an episode halfway across the world in Australia for Team Canada during the WIF Diff Championships. Like we had the idea. What could we didn't even know what the time zone difference was at that point. Can we do an episode? Wouldn't it be great if we could do a live episode with Team Canada in Australia? Let's, like we say, we're all about supporting Canadian disc golf. Let's see what happens. It worked out that the timing was perfect. It was early morning for them the next day. It was right around our time for podcasting, so that worked out great. You had reached out to Colleen McInnes and said, "Hey, if anyone from Team Canada is available during this time, we know you got your schedule for your tournament, but if anyone's available, we'll take anybody. We just want to speak to somebody." And as it turned out, that it was originally going to be Colleen's partner Chris, and there was another name. I don't want to.
Karen Martel was there.
No, it wasn't originally going to be Karen. It was going to be somebody else because they were all going to be on the course supporting the team. Craig wanted, if you weren't playing, then you were out supporting the team, which is we obviously admire, and that's what we wanted. But then once we actually went live, we ended up having Chris and Karen. They just got back from the first one or two holes, I think, came back to the WIF Diff kind of like the clubhouse, sitting in a corner, did the podcast for us, which was amazing. They were telling us what it was like, what the local scenery was like, the tournament, the hospitalities, everything like that. That was awesome. And then right at the end of the interview, we were just about to wrap it up, and Sophia and Colleen finished their round, or they were finished walking the course, jumped onto the podcast, jumped in the chair, kind of pushed Chris and Karen out a little bit. But having them, as soon as they finished the round, we had all these top FPO disc golfers that wanted to be on the podcast, wanted to have a shout out back to Canada. And for us, it was like, can we believe we just did that? We just did a podcast halfway around the world in another country, and we had all these people that wanted to be on there, and it was that bonus, that cream on the cake. Getting extra people on was just a highlight for me.
Yeah. No, that was for sure. And like you said, that was one of those big highlights, definitely. I think I don't even know what to add to that. You just hit it so perfectly. It was a highlight for us. And like you said, it might not have hit as well with the listeners so much, but just the way it all came together and the kismet that brought it to what it was, definitely a highlight. I'm going to give two real quick things. I'll say another one that was like that was when we're always getting a chance to do something new, whether it was the A tier fantasy podcasts and then interviewing after that. But like the On Location at Cold Garden, another quick hit. That was another awesome one. Now, it didn't, we learned a lot in that one, but the experience that we had was one that could not be forgotten for sure. And then my last real quick thing I want to hit with that too is it was putting the podcast out there, interviewing people, chatting with people, but then when we would go out to a tournament and then we get to meet them. And it didn't matter if it was someone who knew us and we didn't know them, if it was a listener we chatted with, if it was someone we interviewed, right? When we got to meet Miguel for the first time and Gabby, if we're talking about the pro side, or I met Colleen for the first time, like that, those were real highlights. But just as much a highlight when I would meet Jen or I met Brody or those type of people where we were out and they were like, hey, we really love what you're doing. And we're like, oh, what? People like what we're doing? Like that was such
people outside of Edmonton? Yeah.
Yeah. And then of course the people who have supported us on Patreon now, like Sam and Dylan, that people are like, yeah, we like you guys and we want to support you. Right. So.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, like you said, there's so many highlights. The Cold Garden, what was the other one that you mentioned? I forgot it now.
What else? Whether the A tiers.
Oh, the A tiers. Yeah, no, the A tiers. Doing that, just being, like I said, we didn't know what it was going to be like. We thought we might reach out. Maybe we'll only be able to get half the people on because other people are like, who are you guys? But every single TD, every single FPO and MPO, apart from Gannon, but we won't hold it against him.
No, that was
wanted to be on the, actually, and that's what our goal was, to get exposure, right? And if they come on, that's more exposure for them in an area that they would never normally got exposure. So, yeah, that was a real highlight.
Definitely. So, guys, we're kind of at the end of the time that we've got here. We thank you for listening to this one. We got a few other things to say to wrap this one up. So this was our Christmas episode. So you guys who are listening, it's time to start kind of getting ready, steeling yourself up, get back to the family, get back to the gifts and the party and everything else, probably some cleaning up of wrapping paper, that type of thing. So get to that. But this was our look back episode. We're going to do a New Year's episode for you as well. We'll drop it in the Patreon because it will be a pre-record, and we'll be looking forward. We'll be looking towards next year, some of the goals, some of the things that we've got planned. Maybe, I don't know, some of the ideas maybe for the podcast we got coming, Daryl. Will we reveal those? Or
maybe we'll just tease a few of the ideas because at the moment they are ideas. We've got a few things set that we want to do. How we're going to go about it or when they're going to come out. I don't think we need to tease too many things because maybe they won't happen or they might not happen till later in the year, but there's definitely a direction that we want to take the podcast in. There's so many ideas that we've got. And we want to hear from you guys as well. If what sort of things would you like us to cover? What sort of things would you like to see us do on the podcast? Thanks, Sam, for tuning in. We will talk to you next time.
Winter League.
Yeah, get to that Winter League. So that'll be a look forward to 2025. Exciting things. I'm excited for 2025, Jeremy.
Yes, me too. I'm really pumped for it just to keep building on the momentum we've got going. So let's tell everybody, as always at this point, thanks for listening. If you're not subscribed to our channel, please subscribe. Tell a friend to subscribe. If you're already subscribed, you can do that on YouTube. Follow us on Instagram, like and comment on our stuff. You think that the likes and the comments are something that doesn't make a difference, but it certainly does. It just adds more volume and activity to our accounts. And by doing that, it puts more exposure to get more people going, more people, more support, more guests, more prizes to give away, all of those things. Exactly. And if that's not enough, or you've done all of that and you're like, I still want to support you further, jump on our Patreon, check that out. Check out our Buy Us a Beer. That's a one-time thing you can do. It's on our Linktree. And we appreciate everyone who's done that so far. Hey, Daryl.
Oh, absolutely. One thing I just wanted to mention on the Patreon, if you do join up to our Patreon, you will get the New Year's episode early as well.
Yes,
That's
and you
one
can
of the
join it
benefits.
when
You'll
we're
get the-
recording it, right?
Yeah, you can join the pre-record, and also you get access to it early before it goes out on New Year's Day.
New Year's Day.
And that'll be an ongoing thing. Anytime that we can't do an episode, if we do a pre-record, it'll be dropped in the Patreon early, so you don't have to wait till Wednesday if you just can't get your disco fix.
That's right. And so let's say it. Thank you to all our Patreon members. We really appreciate you. You've jumped on. You're supporting us. It's amazing. The one thing that we won't have is we won't have any around the baskets here for Christmas or for New Year's, but we have recorded some throws and some different things like that. So what we'll do is we'll make sure we've got some extra content for you over the holidays here beyond the episodes that are like this one, and you'll be able to check that out as well.
And also, when you're in Patreon, check the community tab or the chat tab. There's 3 threads going right now. We're doing the distal chat.
Oh,
so if
yeah.
you do your distal, you know, if you've got bragging rights, if you got today's distal in, you know, maybe you guessed it in 2 or 3 guesses. Maybe you nailed it on guess 1. Share your highlights, share your results, put them in the thread. Also, there's a couple threads there. We'll add more to it as well, different topics. If you've got something to say, be a part of the community on Patreon. We're trying to be a bit more active and interactive on the Patreon side as opposed to the content that we put out on Instagram or TikTok. So if you want to hear more for us, or if you want to be more connected to us, Patreon, get over there and drop a chat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Daryl, we should probably end this one. Maybe if you want to end it on that discal bent a little bit, we could say, you know, if you're someone who could actually figure out a disc like the Swarm
Right?
yesterday, like Brock Cicchetti did.
Yeah. He got
I've
it
never even
after
heard of
3
the
or
disc.
4, I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
So if you had one of those Swarms and you'd never thrown it before in your life, I think the thing was a mid-range that was super overstable, right? Like no turn
Right.
on it. It was like a 4 fade on it.
Yeah.
You take that one out. You go to your local Dink and Dunk, which I just think we're going to use on a regular
Absolutely.
basis here. It's a 250-foot hole, and you're going to throw that thing, and you're going to throw it out, and you're going to throw it on as much Anheuser as you can, because you know that thing's just going to try and flip back over. And as it flips back over,
Sorry, just like you said, it's like a mid-range, right?
yes,
So there's going to be no Muskoka layups with that mid-range.
yes,
But you're going to take it to
exactly.
your local Dink and Dunk. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, we're going to throw all of those in. I love it. So as it's kind of taking, you tried to throw it on Annie. It's just fighting back. It's going to fade. It looks like it's going to almost slap itself into the chains. But as it goes and it hits that basket and it grabs those chains, there's only one thing that Swarm's going to do in our hands. That's for sure.
Oh, there's definitely only one thing. They couldn't do anything else.
Yeah. It's going to do, what is it? Oh, I think I remember. It's going to chain out.
Thanks, everybody. Merry Christmas.
Merry-
Happy New Year. Wish you all the best for 2025.
You bet. See you later, guys.